This morning, I don't know if I want to say a little different. I just want to say maybe this is a seatbelt day. You might want to just kind of buckle yourself in, buckle your brain in as we talk this morning about what it means to go against the flow. You hear people say this all the time, go with the flow. Well, there's some sense to that, but the Beatitudes want to say something different to us, and so we just kind of begin this morning with a way of easing us into this subject and understanding what it really, really means. So I'm just going to encourage you to just be with that. You heard the verse already. I'm going to reread a couple of the pieces that are important. But I have two questions for you. The first is just kind of general, and the second will be really, really personal. So the first one is this. Why are we so surprised? Why are we so surprised at the state of the world today? At the headlines? At all the stuff? I mean, we could even say people are disappointed in the way things are turning out. Might even use the word disgusted with the whole thing. And I've got to bring this up short a little bit this morning because of all people, why are we surprised? So I just picked the all-stars from the Bible, and this was their message. We've had it in front of us for the last 2,000 years. Jesus says in John 15, I have told you these things so that in me you will have peace. In the world you will have trouble, but take heart, which means be encouraged. Be encouraged in a troubling world. Get where he's going? I have overcome the world. His brother James says this. Consider it, first part. He opens. This is ridiculous for a pastor to open with these lines. He opens with these lines. Consider it pure joy, my brothers, and includes the rest of you, sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that these trials bring faith and develop perseverance, and perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete and lacking in nothing. Consider it pure joy. Consider the headlines pure joy. That's all he's saying. Peter puts it this way, dear friends, do not be surprised at the painful trials you are suffering, as though something strange were happening to you. I mean, he's right on course. But rejoice that you participate in the sufferings of Christ, so that you may be overjoyed when his glory is revealed. If you are insulted because of the name of Christ, you are blessed, and the Spirit and the glory of God rest on you. Paul puts it this way as he's writing to Timothy, one of his pastors, trying to get it all figured out. And these verses, by the way, I believe they're in your outline. You, however, know all about my teaching and my way of life, my purpose, my faith, my patience, my love, endurance, and even my persecutions, suffering, what kinds of things I did in Antioch, Iconium, Lystra. The persecution I endured, yet the Lord rescued me from them. In fact, everyone who wants to live a godly life in Jesus Christ will be persecuted. Why are we so surprised? You see, God goes against the flow. God is loving and giving to an undeserved world, right? He started with us. We're the undeserved. God is continuing to give himself to an undeserved world. We're going to talk about this a little more later. But there are no people that are deserving, and there are no people, headlines included, that are undeserving of undeserving. We're all in this. So here's the question I really want to ask you, and just let you sit with this morning. Here's the question. Understanding that our current context is sin, evil, pain, and difficulty, here's my question for you. Do you want to be happy? do you want to be happy? It's really your choice. Do you or don't you? I already know the fidgeting. I can see the captions over your head as if on a cartoon strip. Well, yeah, I really want to be happy, but I have an awful job and a terrible boss. My marriage is a mess. My ex messes everything up. The stock market, or at least my stocks, aren't going anywhere. And my kids, my adult kids, don't want to talk about it. We don't have enough money. The world upsets me. Did you hear those verses I spoke earlier? Do you know that the gospel offers good news in the midst of where we're at? God, I'll tell you this later again, God is not in the business of fixing the world. He's calling people to himself. And this gospel brings joy not when everything gets squared away, but when we what? Turn to Jesus in everything. We are not victims of others or our circumstances unless we settle for that, unless you choose that. We can't control our circumstances, but God does. And if God is anything of what we're talking about, then we're going to have to let God do it God's way, or God simply isn't God. Do we really know better than God? One more thing. Life is difficult, but misery is optional. Choosing to be miserable while blaming it on others, God, or your circumstances isn't helping anyone who lives next to you. And I would just ask you the question, how is working on your misery helping you? How is blaming everyone and being all upset and so sure you know what's right for everyone else how's that working for you? How would you think, I found something today that was kind of interesting. How do you think God feels around all the complainers in the world? Try this. So God walks up to a human, disguised of course, and says, how are you doing? Well, what do you mean? Well, do you like it here? No, hate it here. Why? What's wrong? Well, you see that tree over there? It's bent. And the people that used to like me don't like me anymore. And my kids ran up all the bills in my house. And this person over there, he dresses funny. And my own nose is too big and my feet are too small and I just feel weird in the world and I'm just not happy. And God says, well, what about the animals? Oh, the animals. He says, boy, mosquitoes bite you. It's terrible everywhere you go. They poop and all that. I just don't like it. God picks another person. How are you doing? I'm ecstatic. Why? What's going on? This world is beautiful. Everything in it brings me joy. See that tree over there? It's bent all like in an amazing way. God says, what about the ants and the mosquitoes? Incredible, he says. How is it that something as tiny as that would attempt to bite a giant like me? Wow. Starting to think there's hope for us. You see, the New Testament is teaching us that happiness is found going against the flow. God finds God's supernal happiness in going against the flow and loving you anyway. And are we willing to set aside our misery and go for that? So if that's the case, let's ask 3 questions this morning. The first is this. What is persecution? Verse 11 helps us with that of your regular verse. Blessed are you when people insult you and persecute you and falsely say all kinds of evil to you because of me. Three categories of persecution that Jesus raises here. The first is insult. This is the personal affront. Someone comes up to you and says, you don't matter, you're stupid, you're wrong, you're ugly. There's just a lot of this going on today, right? It's intended to be personal hurt to you. And people just say these things. This is persecution. Ridicule, the second thing that he's talking, is to undermine our beliefs and our values and our standards. So I remember someone came to me and misunderstanding the sign at the church I was serving. Oh, you're the pastor of the convent church. Isn't that a cult? You see? They didn't get covenant. Well, they wouldn't have known what that meant either, so, like most of us. You see, ridicule is intended to erode at the foundation of what our values are. So both insult and ridicule can be true or false. Often, there's something to it, and so people can get off by saying, well, I'm just telling them the truth. But the final persecution that he's talking about here is the word evil. This is the unexplained, undeserved, deep physical, emotional, and spiritual injury that the world wants to bring and stop those who are against the flow. The world would like to take the message of Jesus, the good news of the gospel, and say it's not possible because I want to live in the ugliness of the world, figure it all out, and hate everybody for it. I want to have my own sense of control and an ability to name it the way I want to name it. All mystery is gone when you can explain it. And one of the things some of the only things people have left anymore is the ability to explain the world the way they want to make their own heart feel better for maybe 25 minutes until it wears off. The early church called people who were persecuted to death martyrs. So I went back and I looked at that word, and the word martyr literally means to witness for Jesus, to testify, to speak the word of Christ to another. If this is the case, then every Christian dies every time they're given an opportunity to speak for Jesus, and they do. This is what persecution is. So a little more of the heavier artillery would ask the next question. Why persecution? And for this, I want you just to turn to Matthew 6, chapter 6. Just kind of flip over one page. This passage talks about several things that are very, very well known to us, but I'm not sure we live through them or not. Let me read the first and last verse of the passage so you have it, and then we're going to talk about it. This will be familiar to you. Verse 25, therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life. They had been thinking about persecution too. Do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body or what you will wear. Is not life more important than food, and body more important than clothes? And then the capsule verse is the last two verses, verse 33. But seek first the kingdom of God and God's righteousness, and all these things will be given to you, all the things that you worry about. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Why persecution? Because, as we've already outlined, but let me walk us back through this so we make sure we really understand this. There is persecution because the world is evil. And the world is evil through and through from the day Adam and Eve decided to have apple pie after dinner and picked from the tree and chose before God. We know what your statute is. We no longer, those apples are far too tempting and Eve's too good a baker. We're going to eat them. The world is full of evil. Let me ask you this part of my first question again. Do we realize this, or are we expecting more from the world? Are you doing your prayers at night, hoping that when you wake up to the morning news, oh, good, they're all behaving themselves today? Right? Now, of course, we don't do that, but I'm asking you, do you do that? Are you hoping that someone's going to get all the toothpaste that got squirted all over the bathroom back into the tube for us when we do it? Because that's what this is all about. Get it all fixed so when I get up in the morning, the worst thing I have to deal with is a bad hair day. That's just me. I always have a bad hair day. It's tempting, isn't it, to think that it's not the whole world, it's just the bad guys that are bad in the world. We love to blame and accuse authorities, world leaders, politicians, the bad guy groups like criminals and ISIS, and we're all about those guys are really wrong, as if we're not part of those guys. Now, I know you're not part of those guys. I know that each and every one of us gathered in the service today are at least more polite and civil, but none of us are innocent. And we've thought those thoughts. Are we really saying to Jesus that we were kind of worth being saved, but they're worthless? Are we all together in this? And if it's true, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to live your life? Do you want to be happy? Or do you want to go on blaming God and everyone else for what isn't right out there? The second reason why there's persecution, and this might come to you strangely, mostly because of verse 33, there is persecution because of a God who is loving us. There's persecution because there's a God who cares so much that this God knows that we're not going to get the lesson unless we run around in the world of our own making till we're sick to death of everyone else, no, of ourselves. And we take it back to God and say, if I trust you, can you handle my life? The truth is, that's what God wanted all along. And there's not any other loving gods out there that'll let you get into every other neighbor's fence and field and go check everything else out and then let you come back and say, no, I think I want this. And God says, good, good. That's why I set up the world this way. God seeks our trust, and God is the only one that can make us happy. Only God can do this. Do we believe it? One of my favorite authors talks about worrying in this way. Fussing always ends in sin. We imagine that a little anxiety, a little worry are an indication of how wise we are and how much we really care about things. It is much more an indication of how wicked we are. Because we of all people believe that God's asleep at the switch, so we got to worry. God's not going to get it, so we got to get it to Him. Talking about a terrible world. If it were up for me to set God's alarm clock, man, you guys are in trouble. Fretting springs from a determination to get our own way. All our fret and worry is caused by calculating without God. Here's some of our calcs without God, right? We think He doesn't know we have a problem, so we start calculating. Even worse, we sometimes think that God doesn't care about our problem, so we start deliberating. We think that evil is more powerful than God. So we jump off the God bandwagon and start taking care of things ourselves. We think that our way is better because we don't know God's way and we only know our way. You see, if we believe in a sovereign God who's in control of everything, then every single thing, even the things we pray about, even the most difficult things in the world, God will find purpose and hope in those things for us. Even if it feels like to us they are untrue or not right. God knows best about our lives, or God isn't God. God is my Father. He loves me. I shall never think of anything He will forget. Why should I worry? How do we respond? In light of these things, how are we to respond? Back to our verse and verse 12. He says this: rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. You see, our response to this crazy world that we happen to be in, and the crazy people that live around us, and all the circumstances that we think are doing us in, is to rejoice because God knows better. And that led many in the first century to their deaths. And I am told that the circle around the Colosseum wasn't to get in to see the Raiders and the 49ers play. That Colosseum was a ring of people who were brought in every day to be slayed by gladiators, bears, and lions, and what have you. And not only that, but while they stood in line, they sang the hymns of the church. They knew this in perilous times. We've completely forgot this message. We think that everyone on TV are running away with the world. They're not. It's TV. Think about that. We get to rejoice because this is in our home, and that God's on the throne, and things are being worked out. Whether my air conditioning's working at 9 o'clock at night or not. I got a feeling. It was great calling Sam last night. He was so wonderful. But I know how you feel if you think you need to call me at 10 o'clock at night and you don't want to. You know, should I mess with Sam? How do I get our air conditioner in line so it gets fixed before Wednesday? Right? You see, God's in charge. We don't live in this world even when your top 10 things are going crazy. So there's two ways this rejoicing and this reward looks. The first is kindness. When evil is met with kindness, God's point is made every time. Every time. When you meet evil with kindness, boop, gospel, home run, touchdown, a 99-yard touchdown. Swoosh, basket, full court, all net. Every time you meet evil with kindness, whoosh, score! Better than Argentinian soccer. I mean, they really make that look good. All those guys running around on that hot field like that, I get a heart attack just watching it for 10 minutes. God's saying, when you understand this and you meet your life with a God that you really believe in, and adversity smacks you and kindness comes back, it's beautiful, God says. That's what I'm doing. And then the second is standing for God. Now, we know how to make a stand for God. We get a bunch of people. We make sure it's in the newspapers. The news is there. We're protesting against. That's not what he's talking about here. The faithful stand against the flow in quiet ways, and you always know when the faithful are standing because the world sees what we are for instead of what we are against. If the world only sees what we are against, then we've made an event, we've had a rally, we've gotten our point across, we socked at Tulum Harper Valley PTA, but we didn't stand for God. When we stand for God, everyone around knows what we're for. Two examples of this. Daniel in the Old Testament, they said, okay, no more prayer. He just quietly went to his room and kept praying until they threw him in the lion's den, and they weren't having Daniel, but they had the lion keepers, right? You know the story. Or how about the disciples when they come at chapter 5 of Acts, and they said they were rejoicing because they were worthy to be persecuted like Jesus. You got it. Okay, so here's the application part. Let go and let God. I know pop psychology. In pop psychology, it's just an excuse. Hey, let go, let God. I'm not responsible, just going to do my own thing. Or maybe resignation. Well, I'm just the victim. The deck is stacked. It's all rigged. Poor me. Right? Maybe let go and let God is a 12-step slogan. It's cute, it might be true, but we don't know much about it. How about this? Let go and let God is an extraordinary biblical exhortation in which we let go of our fear, our failure, our success, our fretting, our insults, our expectations, our assumptions, our entitlements, our rights, our worries, our agenda. Everything that I want, we let go to a sovereign God who knows better than we do, and we let God determine the playing field, and we quit worrying about our lives. Doesn't that sound good? I mean, it sounded good when I started on this Monday. I don't know how this is coming across, right? Wow. I want that. Let go of appearances, results, and feelings, and let God fill us with the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. And let me tell you, worry never gave me those fruits. And by the way, you can't get those fruits unless there's adversity. So let me just say this in closing. If you want God to change others and your circumstances, it will never happen. That door closed. In fact, I don't know that that door was ever open. I think that's a lie that's kind of played out through religion in the world today. But God invites you to a trusting, growing relationship, changing us from the inside out, and that changes everything. You see, God is inviting you to a change from the inside out, and that will change everything. And you're saying, when does that happen? It happens when you believe in that kind of God. It happens when you start fellowshipping with Christians. It happens when you're in a small group and you're desperately talking about those things. It happens when you involve yourself in a class or a Bible study here, and you take the next step. It happens when you serve at the food pantry or teach in Sunday school or get involved at all kinds of levels. Because all those things do is they amp up the adversity so that we have to trust in God. Do you get it? That's what God's doing. He's not fixing the world. He's changing us. And the more we stay kind of attached to Jesus but detached from the whole apparatus, we have enough Jesus to make us miserable. We're either in for the swim or we're dry on the beach. It's what he's talking about. One challenge. Can you think of something this morning that you would be willing to let go and let God off? Let go and let God. And just take what you've heard here today and lay it against that one thing and see what God does with it. God's inviting you. Just what? If you got a ton, that's fine. You want to put them all on the altar, that's great. That's good. But if it's just me thinks, I'm not sure, I don't think Jeff's telling me lies, but wow, I haven't heard this in a long time, or maybe never. Think about it this week. Let's pray. Jesus, we know that you desire from us our lives and our hearts and our relationship, and that this is what you have in store for us. We keep thinking that you might be wanting to fix the apparatus around us when in fact you don't even want to fix us. You just want to invite us to a relationship with you. Help us to get perspective of how the world really is, how you see it, how you've allowed it to become, how you use it to gain influence in our hearts when we finally decide that we're all the prodigal sons and daughters and we just want to come home. we've realized that you're not going to turn the pig pen